Hey Gerhard, welcome back and good morning for me. Good evening to you.
Hello, hey, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, Happy New Year as well.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I think it's been a year and a half because it was July.
Yeah, I
It was
think it
about
was
July of
June
2013.
2023.
Okay, yeah, about a year and a half. And last time was I think CI/CD pipelines, if I remember,
Exactly, or in general, like CI/CD options in Power BI.
which are at least certainly more robust today than they were because that was right after the release of the initial announcement of Fabric, right? Yeah, because it was
That's true, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Well, welcome back, and this time I think we have certainly some expansions of some of the stuff that you've been doing over the last few years. Because I remember getting a demo from you years ago on the kind of the Power BI management tool in VSCode. It seems like that universe has certainly expanded a little bit more broadly into the Fabric platform, which is pretty cool. And I think
Yeah, so
one
yeah,
thing.
it
Okay, go ahead.
basically took the idea from Power BI Studio and applied it to Fabric. So because there's also some gaps, I would say, in the usability, and that's what I'm trying to fit with Fabric Studio.
uh, Curiously, like, would you at least say like the gaps are narrowing? Maybe not like fast, but it is in terms of admin options. Is it at least growing a
It's
little
getting
bit?
better.
It
It's
is
getting
getting better,
better,
yes, slowly, yeah.
but it's still a long road, I would say.
Which at least leaves a lot of room open for yourself and a lot of other companies that make tools like this. Between you, like Alex Whittles with Sentinel and stuff. So thankfully, there's at least people out there making some stuff that help with the management of all of these. I would say the one thing that just considering like the expansion and the improvement of Fabric, I do like the fact that we used to call everything artifacts, or Microsoft did, but now it's back to items
Yes,
now.
items, yeah.
So I've never, yeah, from a software perspective, I understand the word artifact, but for like the average business user, it makes it sound antiquated and old. It was not a good term because it just didn't. I don't think it fit as far as like the language went for the typical developer that they were targeting towards. So I'm glad it just went to item from there. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
but I think to start with from here, like I do with a lot of my guests, I'd love to give you a chance to maybe introduce yourself a bit to the channel. So get a better background of what you're doing and segue whenever you want into what we're talking about today as well.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so my name is Gerhard. I'm living in Austria with my family. I'm working with Microsoft and let's say the data stack and SQL Server and Power BI and all those kind of tools for like almost 20 years. Initially starting with BI data warehouse applications on SQL Server, as I said, and like for the last 10 years more towards big data platforms, data engineering. But still a lot of things with the traditional BI stack around Power BI, especially because that's like kind of where my heart beats. And I'll always do things in that direction, I guess. Yeah, Microsoft MVP for I don't know, like 8 or 9 years.
That's
And
funny.
yeah, frequently um, blogging, posting on LinkedIn. Well, as you can imagine, building VS Code extensions in my spare time. And I think that's it basically.
As we've talked about before, I think on the first stream, my first cross time ever crossing paths with you was through Power Pivot Pro like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, because you very early on did a couple of like guest posts, and I think
Yeah,
I even helped out back at like at the Slack channel days with them on some DAC stuff. And I remember Rob very lovingly calling you like the Mad Wizard of DAX because you would come up with these ridiculous patterns for like stuff that would work. But you were very good at back in like 2015, 2014 at figuring out complex scenarios with the DAX language.
yeah, exactly. So I have a strong background also in MDX for those of you that still know the language, which then kind of like evolved into DAX. And yeah, I've started there from the very beginning when it was still like Power Pivot in Excel, and you could already do a lot of amazing stuff in there. And yeah, but I guess Power BI just got more enterprise ready, and like new functions were added, new capabilities, especially new enterprise features. And like today, Power BI, I think, is like the de facto standard when it comes to reporting, especially in the Microsoft environment, right? And yeah,
Okay,
like
exactly. Yeah.
knowing DAX and also knowing like Power Query and all the different tools or sub tools that are part of Power BI is like crucial to actually build a proper solution, I would say.
Well, and we're in a better position today than I think we ever have been, especially in the stack, to build like a proper data platform with the lowest threshold or bar of expertise that's needed. Like you still need expert knowledge on certain parts of it, but I think the minimum bar of knowledge, it is slowly lowering a bit as it becomes more
Yeah,
front end focus and other stuff, which is really nice, and hence everything with Fabric. But on the topic of the thing today, so that this was announced, I think, last month, but you have a new tool for VSCode as well that can help with some of the management of the items that you have within Fabric. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And
So
also I
like,
realize we still need to share screen too, but whenever you get a sec to do that, and then we can slowly start segueing into that topic.
yeah, sure. Let me share a screen, and I prepared like a couple of slides. It's
Oh
not
yeah, perfect.
much, but yeah, this monitor. So let me this one to the other one. So you should see my screen.
And it's coming up, and here we go. Beautiful.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'll give you like a brief introduction and also some demo about Fabric Studio, so the extension that I've built in the last months, I would say. And yeah, so I already introduced myself. Here's just some links. You can find me on Twitter or X. As I said, I'm blogging at blog.gbrueckl.at. You can always reach me like via my email. All the stuff that you're seeing here, like Fabric Studio and also the other extensions that I've built and all the other stuff that I did, like tools that I built for the community, are also on my GitHub account. Yeah, I'm working with a company called Pico, where we focus on building data and AI solutions for our customers on the Microsoft platform, mainly in the German-speaking areas, so Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And yeah, I'm also one of the organizers of the SQL Saturday or Data Community Day Austria, where we have like a meeting in person in 2 weeks. So if you're from that area, you might also want to join there. And yeah, let's jump directly into Fabric Studio. So yeah, what is Fabric Studio? As I mentioned, it's a VS Code extension. For those of you that are more familiar with VS Code, there is basically a desktop version that you can install on your local machine. But there is also a web version. So if you go to vscode.dev, it's basically like running VS Code in your browser. There are some limitations, but it's 100% compatible with what you will see in the demo. So everything that you see, you can also do in the browser. So like if you are working at a customer and like don't have like admin permissions that you cannot install VS Code, you can still use it usually if you just open it in the browser. So that's
Awesome.
one of the pretty cool features that just comes with VS Code out of the box if you build the extension properly. The other stuff is it's open source. It's everything is on my public GitHub repository. It can be reused. I'm also happy if someone wants to contribute. If you have any like feature requests or ideas that could be implemented, just post them there. I'll have a link at the very end of the presentation. And it's all 100% based on the official Fabric REST APIs. So there is like no hidden things, no installations. It's all basically REST API calls that I do from VS Code. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, that feature or that for those API calls. So if you're working with Fabric already, you probably know that there's like new features like almost like every month. This also includes like new APIs being added constantly, and I'm trying to keep the features up to date and try to integrate new features into VS Code or into Fabric Studio as soon as possible. But that's a lot of work. And like the main focus is basically on the stuff that I use daily, which is like Power BI and the whole data engineering stuff. There are some features for event streaming, KQL, etc. in there, but it's not as rich as for the other workloads, let's say. Okay. Talking about the features of Fabric Studio, as you will see in the demo afterwards, there are some tree views, as you call them in VS Code, on the left side, similar to the Solution Explorer, where you can browse your local file system. We do have a workspace browser in there that basically allows you to browse through all the items that you have in your workspaces. Some of them have some API actions defined, or you can like run a notebook or run a pipeline and stuff like that. And you can all do from the UI. You don't have to code anything. However, you still have the capabilities of like running your own arbitrary API calls, because I've implemented so-called API notebooks, where you can, well, just run any API call from VS Code, any Fabric API call from VS Code, which is also pretty cool because, as I mentioned, like not all features will be in the UI. For some, it's just too complex. Others just doesn't make sense to add them in the UI, and some are just not there yet because probably didn't have time yet. There's also, and I think that's actually the coolest feature, I called it like item definition editor, which allows you to modify existing items. So for example, if you have a Power BI data set, a semantic model, you can edit it in Fabric Studio in VS Code, publish the changes back to Fabric, and this allows you to basically interactively work and change items online. And this not only applies to data sets, but basically every Fabric item that supports those definition APIs. The most famous one, as I mentioned, is like data sets. It's also for notebooks. It's for data pipelines. It's also for reports. So if you're familiar with the new PBIR, I think it's called, right? Where you have like the report definition as a JSON file. You can also edit those. So you can open the live report, like change the name of a page, for example, and publish it back, and then the changes will be reflected directly in the report. There's also some integration for deployment pipelines. So if you have deployment pipelines set up in Fabric, you can also trigger them from Fabric Studio, or do deploy individual items only if you want to do that. Which is also pretty cool. It's actually the same or very similar to what you can already do with Power BI Studio. So some of the functionalities I just moved over also to Fabric Studio.
So with our item definition, like you mentioned deployment pipelines, which is a fairly UI, or not deployment pipelines, but data pipelines. Yeah, so like it's a fairly UI driven experience, but like some of the things can be like run an API or execute a Python script. So you could, I mean, assuming in theory, then you could go and edit the Python script of a step of a data pipeline that you have inside of the item, and then resave and publish that.
Yes.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah.
And especially for notebooks, you can either like have like the Python code or have like a notebook experience, as you're probably used to, as Fabric also uses the notebook experience. You can basically export both and use both. What's not yet working, and that's like the thing that I want to get in there as soon as possible, is that you can also interactively like execute code from VS Code against the Fabric cluster. But actually, I'm hoping for Microsoft to provide those capabilities at some point, because there's features like Spark Connect that I would really love to see integrated in Fabric, because then that would just work out of the box basically with all the Python features that are already built into VS Code. But we'll see that in the demo afterwards. Yeah, there's also some Git integration. So as you may know, if you're working with Fabric, and you can connect your workspace to a Git repository, and then like if you like change your items, like your notebook or your data pipeline, you can commit those changes to the Git repository. And the Git integration of Fabric Studio basically allows you to do this from from VS Code without having to open the browser at all. So you can basically do your changes in VS Code, publish them like the notebook, like a new piece of code, and you can also then commit those changes to the underlying Git repository from VS Code. Okay, so the idea is that you don't have to use the browser anymore at all. That's the
Nice.
let's say like the long-term goal. Okay. Yeah, besides those features, there are some mainly read-only browsers, like for to browse existing connections, which also has a really nice filter capabilities. So it basically like gives you a list of all the connections that you have to define, whether it's like shared cloud connections or gateway connections or personal connections. You can like browse them and also filter them. That's actually pretty cool. There is a very basic capacities browser. So if you're like a capacity admin of a Fabric capacity, you can see the state of the capacity. You cannot start it or stop it yet because there is no API for that. At least no Fabric API. There are some Azure APIs that would allow you to do that, but no Fabric APIs yet. So that's why it's not in there yet. And there is also the last part, which is a OneLake browser. So you can also browse your OneLake from VS Code as if it were like a local file system. That's something I'll also show in the demo because that's also pretty cool. So like if you like build the pipeline that's producing some data, storing it in a lakehouse, for example, you can then use the OneLake browser from VS Code to basically view the data that you have created, like the K file or the Delta tables, etc. Right? Yeah, so that's like a quick overview of the features, and then I would just jump into the demos unless you have any more questions, Reed.
I think the other ones will probably come up organically as we actually dig into the toolset a bit more. So I'll hold a few of them for during the demo.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let me jump into Visual Studio Code. Okay, so that's Visual Studio Code. When you install the extension, which is available on the marketplace, Studio, you'll find it. You can just like install it from there. You'll also find like the Power BI Studio. That's the other one that I'm building. There is one extension from Microsoft Fabric, it's called. But it's, as far as I know, it's basically just for building Fabric functions or data functions or whatever it's called, if I'm not mistaken. So the one that you're looking for is Fabric Studio. Once you have it installed, a new button will appear on the left side, which is called, well, Fabric Studio. Once you click here, you get like the tree views, like the Fabric, the workspace browser, the deployment pipelines, connections, and capacities at the bottom here. I'll expand them afterwards. But let's first start with the workspaces. So one of the most recent features that have been added is like a workspace filter. So usually, like if you are especially like an enterprise in an enterprise environment, you're not interested in all workspaces, right? So you want to have like a filter. So what I've done is I basically implemented like a regex filter where you can say, okay, I want everything that includes my project, and use like a pipe as an or contains studio or contains data. That's like the workspaces that for this demo are the most relevant to me, right? And then it basically filters them down. I can also remove them and see that there is more, right? But object data and studio. Okay, so back to that. Okay, and from there you can basically browse into your workspace, jump in there, get a list of all the item types that exist. So like if you have like a lake house in your workspace, it will appear on the lake houses. For stuff that you don't have, there will not be any folder. So if you would not have any like reports, that the folder would also be hidden. And then for all those individual items, some of them are more complex and support more features. So for example, if you're like looking into a lake house, you can expand it. Then you see like you can go to the SQL endpoint. You can see like which shortcuts are used there. any jobs like maintenance jobs, if you have like a regular job that optimizes your tables, etc., that's in there. If you have security enabled, you'll also find like the data access roles. You can click the role and see the definition of the role, and also see who's part of that member, part of that role. So that's stuff that the API exposes. It's not always nice because it's some IDs which represents a user, but the username or email is not yet exposed. And again, like that's just what the API returns, and I'm basically like trying to make it like easily accessible and if possible also more appealing visually. Right?
Just having the natural tree hierarchy and everything on the left for all the artifacts. I'm having to retrain myself now to say items. All the items within the Fabric experiences, just from a management perspective, makes things really easy to find for sure.
Yeah, so that's the idea. One of the next features, like is again, like as soon as the APIs are available, so there will probably be some you can like create folders in your workspace, right? And you can group your items individually in those folders. And I'm already working on some prototype to also get this working in Fabric Studio, so that you have like the folder structure from your Fabric workspace also in Fabric Studio, which, well, just makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah, let's stick with the Lakehouse. So you can also browse the tables. So there is an API that gives you all the tables, but you cannot go any further from here. If you want to go any further from here, like get like the detailed definition or anything, it's not yet available via the APIs. Okay. What you can do though from here is you can start a maintenance job, which runs like an optimize on the Delta Lake table that's backing this like dim account table. Okay. What you can also do, we can either do it on the table level, but you can also do it on the Lakehouse level. You can say like browse in OneLake, and it asks me to sign in. That's second, and jump to another one. So going back, cancel this one and browse it again.
As you're bringing that up, just a quick question from someone in the chat, which was, can you get to the files section of a Lakehouse where you can actually see?
Yes, you can. I would like to show that, but something went wrong. Let me refresh this. Okay, guess it cached. Let me start it again. I guess it cached something now from the wrong call. Okay. It's just that I have my credentials with the different browser windows. So if I go in here, then I don't have to type in my password anymore because I don't know it out of my head. So now we should be ready to go. Okay. Okay, now I can already browse my OneLake. So I have like the table section, right? Like the dim account table that we've seen before. If you're familiar with Delta, there is always like a couple of Parquet files in the root. There is a folder like for the Delta log, and you can also have a look at the Delta log here, right? So that's what's on the format. And then you basically see what the Delta log looks like and what actions are defined in there. Like a new file was added with a couple of rows, etc. The same also works for the files. So if you browse the files, I think that's a shortcut, or I don't know. You can also browse like the CSV file.
And so, since you were kind of on the topic of is that why you were logging in and everything a little bit earlier on all this? Let me just bring this one other question up, which I think is a good one. How is the authentication with API token managed? Essentially, can you switch between several tokens in Microsoft Entra IDs?
Yeah. Okay. So there is two things about that. First of all, as you've seen, like if you have not connected yet, you get prompted like the window pops up. If you have been authenticated in the past, you don't have to re-enter your credentials. That's one of the other nice features of VSCode. Like there is a built-in authentication provider that handles the authentication for you. You don't have to do anything specific there. What you can also do, which was just added like last week, I think, as you can see at the very bottom, there is, this tab like Fabric Studio, and shows which user is currently logged in. If you click that button, it asks you to sign in again, and then you could sign in with a different user. Okay, and that's how you can like change users. It's also working with like if you get like access as a guest user. Let me sign in again with the same user. You can also specify the tenant ID of the guest tenant, and then sign in as a guest with your regular Active Directory user. So that's also something that you can do. This applies to also to the Power BI Studio extension, so that applies to both.
Perfect.
Okay, let me go back here to the Lakehouse, but I think I've covered most of it already. Yeah, that's for the Lakehouse tables. I've shown you like the browse in OneLake. What you can also do is like copy the SQL connection string and stuff like that, or the OneLake API path. So if you have like any other tool that needs to access data from your Lakehouse, you can just copy the tables path. And then you get like what you would usually like find in the 5th submenu of the settings of your Lakehouse or somewhere, right? So that makes it pretty easy to get those details. You can also copy basically everything, which was copy properties. And that's basically all the information that the API returns, right? So like the table path, the file path, the SQL endpoint, etc. And so you have like all the information at hand. So let me close this. As you know, every lakehouse is associated also, or like a SQL endpoint is also created for every lakehouse, so you can also browse this. What I've recently added is like a functionality to sync the metadata. So there has been some issues in the past, some will partially still exist. Like if you like write data into your lakehouse that is not immediately available in the SQL endpoint. And because like there is some kind of sync between the data that's written to the lakehouse until it's available in the SQL endpoint. And like I had cases where it takes up to like 1 hour. It's fixed mainly, or most of it is fixed. It can still take a couple of minutes till the data is available. So we added a new sync metadata action here that basically manually triggers that sync. And this then shows up here in the batches. So this one is just running at the moment. And as you can see, there has been some others in the past. This one I just tried before. Not quite sure what the monitor actually is, but that's something that runs internal. I probably need to talk to the people at Microsoft what other actions there might exist. There's also a create, which, well, when I guess the lakehouse or the SQL endpoint was created, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then yeah, let's go into the other items. For data pipelines, you will also see some more information. So you will see all the connections that are used within the data pipeline. So if you're like copying data from one lakehouse to another lakehouse in your data pipeline, you will see those as connections here. And you can click the connections and see what's actually used, where it's connecting to, etc. Just to get some more information on them. Yeah.
Curiously, as you managed to explore a lot of this with VS Code, have you had any aha moments of kind of finding something that this helped expose to you as part of a tenant, or anything that you found has been a huge time saver with some of this?
Yeah, the stuff was like copying the SQL connection strings and lakehouse paths for tables and files. I think that's probably the biggest time saver for me, at least. For the connections, it's like a nice to see. It's read only, obviously. So also the connections part, like the connections tree view that I will show you later. That can be pretty cool with the filtering capabilities. It's just also not possible in the Fabric UI. I'll demo that later. Okay. So yeah, for the data pipelines, you can also trigger them from here. You can say run data pipeline. Now I see, okay, it's just started a new pipeline job, and then you can go here and see the jobs, whether they succeeded. You can also click the job and get all the information again. That's the information that's exposed by the API. I cannot really show anything more. And
Yep.
you basically see whether it's failed or it's succeeded or it's currently running. That's this thing that's here already. Yeah, that's it for the actions for the data pipelines. Environments, there are some APIs. They're slightly different though compared to all the other APIs, where you can see like what are the staged settings, what are the published settings, like if you're using custom environments. Yeah. Event houses, I don't think there is anything on event houses, anything specific. Same for event streams, graph APIs. Oh, that's also not much here. Lake houses, KQL is same. There's no additional APIs that like listing the lake houses or KQL databases or KQL query sets. Lake house I've just shown you. Notebooks is very similar to the data pipelines. You can basically like run the notebook as a background job. What you cannot do yet is like changing the parameters. So usually when you create like a notebook, you will have a set of parameters of like the tables that you want to load or like a date that you want to process, whatever. If you run the notebook like this, it will basically just use like the default parameters.
Okay.
There is paginated reports. There's nothing. Is there anything in there? No, there's not. Yeah. Reflexes, I've never worked with those as like those real-time capabilities that allows you to trigger some actions on certain events. There is reports. I think there should be, no, there's no connections under there. There is semantic models, which again can have connections. I'm not sure why this is not showing anything. Oh, but it gives you the information at least. So there's like a bug, I guess, where there is no name, but also the API doesn't provide a display name, as you can see here, but it's pretty hard for me to display anything.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And that's the stuff that you come across when you're like working with the APIs, and then you realize, hey, why it's not showing anything? Yeah, sometimes it's just because it's not exposed by the API.
That's fair.
Spark job definitions, I think you can run those. Yeah, you can run a Spark job definition from here. I barely use them, to be honest. I'd rather use notebooks because it's much more user-friendly, I would say. SQL databases, also not much in there yet. SQL endpoints we've seen before. Warehouses. There's also not much you can do with warehouses. And yeah, the last two things is like role assignments for permissions. So that's not an item anymore, but it gives you like all the users that have access to the workspace, which is also a nice thing to see, especially when you want to compare them. And like, if you do it with the Fabric UI in the web browser, it's like 3 clicks at least to get the role assignments. So it's much easier if you do it here. And it gives you like groups or service principals and also like regular users. And the last thing here is the Spark settings. So if you have like a workspace, you're using it for data engineering, and you have like a Spark pool, these are like the Spark settings that you have defined on that Spark pool or on that workspace in the Spark settings or the data engineering settings. Okay. So that's the basic API stuff. What I would like to show next is these edit definition features.
Yes.
Okay, so some of the items that we have just went through support the edit definition API. Okay, like that's a standardized API that allows you to modify the definition of a given item. You can either, like, if that particular item is enabled for this definition API, you can either do right-click on that folder or on the pipeline, but you can also do it on the workspace itself, right? So let me do that. What actually happens is it basically mounts the so-called virtual file system into your VS Code Solution Explorer. What that means is that you can now, like basically similar to what you've seen before, you can drill into your data pipelines, get a list of your data pipelines, and basically see the contents. Okay, so that's what the API exposes. It gives you like all the files that make up that data pipeline. It's a JSON definition, so it might not be super easy to change stuff here. But
okay,
for,
so yeah, I was
basic
really
changes,
curious how these would look. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the JSON definition of the pipeline. That's what Fabric uses in the background. Whenever you do something in the UI, it's basically like modifying this JSON or like adding a new activity, whatever. And that's the way how it is persisted.
And you got the standard timeouts. You got the types, which is like looks like the activity. So waiting.
Yeah, so it's an array. There
yeah,
is like activities in there. There's like a wait task here, as you can see. It's just a dummy pipeline, right? And I have a lookup activity for a lake house and another lookup activity.
Okay.
There can be like dependencies. That's all in there. But if you like do like bulk renames or stuff, that can easily be done here, right?
That's nice.
Or if you want to search for something specific. And yeah, you can do changes here. I'll show you the changing part afterwards and for the semantic models, because I think that's even cooler. Yeah. What you also have is like the platform file that contains additional information like a logical ID. That's unfortunately not exposed. But the most important thing here, I guess, is the display name. That would also be like a description that you could use. And if I change this, so as you can see now, it's not like doing any highlighting, but I know that it's a JSON file, right? So I can select the language for that file and say, okay, that's a JSON file. Then it knows the schema because it's part of that file. And if I'm not mistaken, yeah, so it gives me the intelli-sense here. So the properties that are allowed in this platform file are basically defined in this schema. And so as VS Code has a built-in JSON editor, which reads the schema, it gives me like this intelli-sense and autocomplete out of the box. That's nothing that I have done. That's just like the basic functionality of VS Code. And that's one of the very cool things about VS Code, is that it natively integrates with all the other languages and other extensions, etc., that are installed. Right?
Absolutely.
So, for example, for the Power BI Studio, someone wrote a DAX syntax highlighter, and if you like run DAX code from Power BI Studio, it like also gives you like syntax highlighting without me doing anything for that, right? So,
quick question, just I wanted to pop up from Paishus, if I'm pronouncing this correctly. So, will an admin be able to view all workspaces, or only the workspace he or she would have access to?
As of now, so there is like two different sets of APIs. There is like the regular APIs and there is the admin APIs. I assume, I'm not 100% sure, for if an admin browses using the regular APIs, I guess he will only see the workspaces that he is actually assigned to. Whereas if he would use the admin APIs, you should be able to see all the workspaces. What you've seen so far in the workspace browser, that's just the user APIs. That's not admin APIs. There is an idea of also adding the admin APIs probably as a dedicated tree view, but that's not yet implemented.
Okay.
You could use notebooks. I'll show you this afterwards to get this information though. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I'll let you know if they have a follow-up.
Yeah. Okay. Then yeah, you can change definitions of event house. I've never used them. I actually don't know what's in there. Oh, it's actually empty. Well, that's what's returned. That's an empty event house also, so that's probably okay. Just browse through those if there is anything in there. take some time. Okay, oh, there you go. Okay, so there are some settings in here. You could change them. As I said, I'm not familiar with those. But that just comes out of the box, like, because they're using standardized APIs and they just need to say, okay, also enable that feature for KQL databases, and then it's exposed via Fabric Studio.
Basically, anything and everything, as you mentioned, that is exposed with a writability via the API is editable, whatever that might need to be.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll skip KQL query sets. Let's go into notebooks. You can open the notebook. By default, it will be a regular Py file. So basically, like the notebook serialized as a Python file. So where like every cell is like has like some tags. There are some configurations that you can do in the Fabric Studio settings to expose the notebooks as an IPython notebook, so that it would like basically open a notebook viewer in VSCode. Okay, so that you get like the very same experience that you also have in Fabric, in the Fabric in the browser.
Okay.
As I mentioned during the demo, as of now, there is no way to execute those notebooks against the Fabric cluster, but I'm hoping on Microsoft to add some capabilities there.
I feel like they do a decent job with looking at stuff like this between you, things that other shops like Alex Whittles and Sentinel, where I feel like the community does do a good job of helping identify gaps in what should be needed for the API. They don't always implement things that we want, but I feel like 60-70% of the time, eventually something that is needed for enterprise clients, when they make a loud enough voice, works its way into a new API feature.
So yeah, that's one of the gaps that I currently see, is that like for enterprise development, it's not where it should be. Let's put it like that. So like yes, like limitations in the Fabric UI that you can like only have like open 10 items at a time, like 10 notebooks or whatever. And you can only like switch on the left side, and like every switch takes like 5 to 10 seconds depending on how large your notebook is, and that's just not really convenient, like especially if you use to have like a professional tool like VSCode or like PyCharm or whatever you use.
Yeah,
like the IDE that you use. It's just like a different experience. It's not very user friendly. There is, especially for the notebooks, there is some web extension. It's also a VS Code extension from Microsoft actually, that allows you to execute code from the VS Code web extension against the Databricks against the Fabric cluster, which is okay. Gives you at least the ability to work with the notebooks in the Fabric cluster in a decent way, let's say. But it's also not. It's far from being perfect, I would say.
that's fair.
Okay, let's get to the more interesting stuff. So semantic models. I'll skip the reports on purpose. As you might know, there is like this new TMDL, tabular model definition language format, that allows you to basically serialize the content of your Power BI model into a like readable TMDL files, which basically like YAML files. And you have all the information in there. So like, I don't know, product, you get like all the information of that's the product table. There's a couple of columns in there. Let me just check which one I usually use. I think it works, the regular one. And you can modify those, which I will do in a second. Within currency, and you can say, okay, there is a measure. Let's create another measure. Sure. Read. Hello, read. And you cannot like just save this file. And then on the left side, it basically shows you that like that model has been modified. What you can do now is right-click the model, say publish to Fabric. And now it's basically taking all the definition files, combining it, and uploading it with the API in the background. And if you open now like a report that's connected to that semantic model, you will already be able to like get this new read measure and like use it in your report. I mean, that's obviously just the very basic example, but you could do everything here. right? You could like create measures,
Yeah.
you can create columns, modify format strings. If you want to like bulk replace format strings, or like, I don't know, everything that you can do in the code basically. And all the features that are supported by Power BI. So there are basically like no limitations. Okay. Just do it from VSCode with Fabric Studio.
Just, as kind of a random question, I guess with this is there are quite a few semantic model properties, and this is me not knowing the API that much, that like the tabular editor can expose. You just have to turn on the unsupported option. So like the is private and a few others. I'm assuming those could be like accessed or modified here too. It's just
yes,
you have to
you
be
can,
careful on what you're
everything
choosing
that
to edit.
makes up a semantic model can be changed here. So like this TMDL file is basically just another serialization of the model metadata, and you can basically change everything here.
That's awesome. Okay.
What's also cool here, that everything that you see here basically behaves like as if it were a local file system. Okay, so I could just like copy paste a table. I have a dim currency copy. It would probably give an error because of all those lineage tags. That's something that I need to work on because they need to be unique, if I'm not mistaken. And let me just try it. I don't know how it works. No, yeah. Yeah, it's now complaining about the lineage tags again. Oh no, because this one is dim currency. Let's call it dim currency copy. Because obviously they cannot be two tables with the same name. Publish this. Oh no, it's, oops. Sometimes there's a glitch with the right-click menu. Let's see if it's working now. No, it's still complaining. Yeah, because it's complaining about this lineage tag IDs that need to be unique. You would need to remove them, and then it would probably work. But the thing about this is that you can also just copy like the semantic model definition, right-click copy, and there is like a local folder that is also part of my solution explorer here in VS Code. I could just paste it here, right? And then I basically just downloaded the definition of that model locally to my local folder. And it also works the other way around. So I can basically also copy content from my local file system. Like if I have like a local BBIP file, I can also like copy definitions from here to Fabric. Okay. So this can be used if you, for example, have like a local file and you change the report and you only want to upload like the report content, but you don't want to upload the model. Like usually if you're in Power BI desktop and you do some change and you do publish, it like replaces the data set and it also replaces the report. Yep. Using Fabric Studio and those APIs, you could just also take like the report definition and upload it from here, like drag and drop it basically. And then like replacing the report definition that's online, and then you publish it, and then your changes are online already. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Another feature, like if you ever had like the scenario that you like want to debug a semantic model and you need to copy the semantic model, what you can do in Fabric Studio, you just like I press the Control-C, Control-V, and I just created a copy. What's the complaining here? Anyway, let's see if it's working. That should work. And then if I publish this one, the AdventureWorks simple copy. Let's see if it's working. That's always the thing about live demos, right?
Oh, of course.
Okay, it succeeded. And now, for example, if I go back to Fabric Studio, go to my semantic models, click refresh. So at the top, there's like the refresh workspaces button that refreshes the current selected item. And then it should hopefully, I think it should, this. Oh yeah, there you go. It's here already, right? So it just basically created a copy of that
That's
semantic
nice.
model. What you can also do is you can not take any of those. I can also like edit the items of this other workspace and say edit items. It will now mount this particular workspace also into my Solution Explorer, and I can now like copy over to my other workspace. And now basically I've just copied one semantic model, or the definition of a semantic model. It's obviously not processed, from one workspace to another. Right? And that's also pretty cool, I would say. Because otherwise you would have to like open, I don't know, like tabular editor, get the definition, enter your credentials and stuff, and then like publish it to the other workspace. And here it's just basically like copy pasting semantic models between workspaces.
Exactly. Now, once you publish, out of curiosity, with this, will it trigger the automatic refresh in the Power BI service that some people get when they like have to do it from desktop?
Honestly, I have no idea. But
I know with tabular editor, it unless you edit a table definition or column definition, those are the. I think then there might be one other. I believe if you edit either of those definitions, basically the data is going to change. So now it has to do a refresh. But I believe measures or any other attributes that
automatic afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. There are a set number of conditions where it can or can't be met. So I would guess though that if tabular editor doesn't always trigger it, then this shouldn't. This would follow the same criteria of what would or wouldn't trigger a model refresh, unless you're making a brand new one.
I don't know. So we changed the simple one, right? We just created a new measure, so it's probably not refreshed. I can do a quick check. We're using, that's Power BI Studio now that you're seeing. So I'm going to the simple one. No, this hasn't been refreshed yet. So that's just a demo data set. This also wasn't refreshed. The copy one is also not refreshed. Probably. No, that's also. So it's not triggering a refresh.
Oh, interesting. Even with the copy one, because like that. So when you copy it, that's just the metadata. It doesn't actually include the.
That's just the metadata. It's just an empty data set then.
I'm surprised it does. Like usually on first time creations, I think it would do an initial refresh automatically.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But we are not doing it as of now.
It was good food for thought. So thanks for running through that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's it for the semantic models. As I said, like you can basically do anything in here, whatever this DMDL format supports. Like can also change expressions or parameters from here. Like you have like a default value, then you can change it here. Similar, like changing the parameters, you can also do it via Timble and then update the definition.
Yep.
Okay. And also the Power Query and basically everything that's in your data set. Now, coming to the report. So I mentioned it during the presentation. There's like recently, like, I don't know, like 4 months ago, like this PBIR format was introduced, which basically serializes the report into a set of JSON files, basically. So there is like the definition, then there's like the report name. I think it should be something like somewhere version, the pages, different pages that are part of the report. The page name, so there's one JSON, there's like the display name of the page, and you can change all of this. You can even like copy pages between reports if you want to, like again, like using copy paste. You can change all the properties of that report. You can change individual visuals, like if there is, I don't know what visual that is. It's a text box, or there's probably ones. There is text box. Do we have like some bar charts or whatever? So that's a scatter chart, for example. You have like all the definitions here, so what's used on the columns. what measures are used, etc. That's all here. You can basically change it here, like in the code, publish it back to the service, and the report picks up those changes immediately. Right?
That's nice.
So you can live edit your report. And with all the capabilities that you have with VS Code, like especially this copy paste stuff, bulk edit, find replace, etc. So that's pretty cool, I think. It gives you
Just
a lot of
the agility of that to be able to go back and forth, and again paired really nicely with the fact that we have PBIR and Tyndall and everything, makes spending time in the code, I think, a lot less of a daunting exercise in terms of complexity. Yeah.
And also here you have like the schema defined again that just comes out of the box. So if I go here and it gives me all the other options that I would have, so I can say, oh, I've never used filter configuration. I don't know what's in there. Guess I can define filters here. And yeah, you see, like it's like a professional developer experience that you have here when working with like JSON files. Assuming that's like this JSON definition is defined at the top of the JSON file, this gives you like also a nice user experience, so that you're not completely lost and don't know what properties exist. You can just rely on this on the schema.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also again, like you could copy paste the definition of that report, and use the one that you have like in your local file system from another report, for example, that had like a PBIR file. So because you have like the very same definition here. If you use like PBIP project model and enable the preview features for this PBIR format, you could just copy paste stuff between your local development and Fabric Studio, basically.
Well, the biggest thing that I think kind of comes out from that is the file structure. Like the Tyndall is an entirely new language that they do. Like PBR was more of like a split in format type thing that they did. So they broke everything out, which makes copying sections, pages, and all that much easier. Still fingers crossed someday in probably the far future for an actual new language for that. But it's a great advancement of it, just in terms of that hierarchical structure that you now have for your report elements, which is really nice, as you mentioned, for just transferring and like find replace type stuff when you need to do bulk updates and everything.
So that I think that's the coolest feature, actually, like the whole item definitions things that you can do here. Also that is like integrated as a file system. They have like those copy paste capabilities, and it interacts perfectly with all the other VS Code extensions like the JSON viewer, etc. There's also, like, if you've had a look at the Timble stuff, there's also syntax highlighting here, and also the IntelliSense, because there is like an extension that was built by a team of Rui Romano, that allows you to like get these capabilities also for Timble files.
See all
the properties that exist and stuff.
We hosted one of the engineers over on our Analytic Endeavors live stream earlier, and they've done a couple demos of that. But it's a really cool Tyndall extension for VS Code that was built by the official Microsoft team. Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't done anything for this to work in combination with Fabric Studio, right? So just working out of the box, because it relies on the Tyndall extension, and then Visual Studio Code picks it up, realizes, hey, it's a Timble file, and hey, I do have an extension that allows me to like render these Timble files properly and do like the syntax highlighting and stuff.
Yep, exactly.
It just works natively. Okay, cool. Yeah, then we should hurry up a bit. Let me jump back to, we've done the workspaces. There's deployment pipelines. I have some defined. Yes, there is a deployment pipeline. You have like different stages, development, test, QA, whatever. We have like all the items that are in that development stage or in that development workspace. You can then like select different ones and click the deploy button at the top, and it will deploy the selection to the next stage. That's what it's doing, basically. It's pretty basic, I would say, but it's still like if you're relying on deployment pipelines for your deployments, I think that's also a nice thing that you can do it directly from VS Code.
Agreed.
Okay, deployment connections. Basically it gives you a list of all the connections that you have access to. The one that you only see the GUID is I'm just puzzled why there is a display name now. Not sure where this one is coming from. But those two are gateways, and there are like connections defined on the gateway. And you can click like in the individual connections and see like the properties where it's pointing to, etc. You also see like who has access to the gateway, which roles and permissions are defined. Again, it's all the information that's exposed via the REST APIs. There's also the shareable cloud connections, which are pretty cool and like kind of like newest fabric where you can like share connections between different users.
Well, that's nice.
And this also gives you like all this information. You have like the ID that you can reference. I plan to also like introduce like drag and drop capabilities. So like if you like drag a shared cloud connection over to a data set, for example, that it like changes the connection and the gateway, whatever, to that connection. But what I also would like to show is also for the connections, you do have like some filter capabilities. Okay, so now like in an enterprise environment, you probably have like, I don't know, like 1,000 connections or even more across like different gateways. And what you can do is I do have a SQL server, which is called GB SQL 01. Just copy this. Maybe I'm interested in all the connections that are basically having this GB or like the server name in their definition. I can filter those, and now it gives me well, all the connections that point to that SQL server. I could even like take the full path, like connection string, like server name plus database name, and it would like further narrow the results down. And this allows me like to find like duplicates where I have like the same connection defined multiple times with different credentials, etc. So that's something that I think is pretty cool, and it's just not possible at all in the UI, but can save you a lot of work.
Just finding the number of instances is something, it sounds like, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. So besides that, there's not yet any further capabilities for the connections, but I think it's already pretty cool. And there is much more that I guess can be done in the future to like changing connections for specific items and updating them. That's stuff for the future, I would say. Okay, and yeah, the last part is capacities. So if you are like a capacity admin, you get like a list of the capacities that you have access to, and you basically see whether they are running or not. So like the premium per user is always running, this trial is always running that I have active, and there are some others that are like F2 instance that I use for demos, whatever, that are not running at the moment. Yeah.
Have you ever noticed, just out of curiosity, with some larger tenants, just thinking with some enterprise clients, is there any time, delayed timing or anything else where it starts to hit like an issue with being able to scan across? Let's assume you have like a tenant with 3,000 workspaces or 10,000, anything like that, or is it still pretty efficient to like at scale?
To be honest, I haven't tested this on that large scale, but I would definitely be interested in results that maybe some of the viewers had in the past using Fabric Studio, maybe. But that's unfortunately pretty hard to test. So I don't like have like a test environment where I have like 5,000 workspaces. Obviously, I mean I could create them, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'd
That's
rather
fair.
wait for users to complain about it, and then I would have a look into that.
Okay.
Technically, I think it should be possible. The APIs, I would assume, return all the results. If it's 10, it's 10. If it's 10,000, it's 10,000. It might just take a bit more time.
Yep.
But in general, it should work, I think.
Okay. Well, that's fair then.
Two features that I haven't shown yet, also part of the workspace experience. You will see like this little notebook at the top, which allows you to open a notebook. And this notebook basically allows you to run any arbitrary API calls. Okay, so you can set a root path or an API path that's used across the whole notebook. And then this one is like pointing to my workspace now. Now I can just run a GET request using a relative path like /, and then it gives me all the information about the workspace. What I can also do is like get items, and it gives me a list of all the items, right? I can also do like any like post request or whatever. Unfortunately, I don't yet have a definition, like an API definition from Microsoft, like a Swagger file, because this would allow me to also get like IntelliSense and autocomplete for this. So basically, that everything that's defined in the documentation of Microsoft for the Fabric REST API, like if I do a /, it would show me like items or like semantic models on notebooks. It would just show in the context menu, but that's not yet implemented. The code is there because that's the very same code that I also use for Power BI Studio, where this functionality already exists. I just don't have the underlying Swagger API definition for this to work with Fabric Studio. Yeah, but I hope to get this anytime soon from the Microsoft guys.
Fingers crossed sooner than later then.
Yeah, because like, I mean, if you're familiar with the APIs, I think it's still okay, but it would be much more convenient to just get like the examples, for example, that you have like when like, I don't know, like running a job or updating a pipeline, etc. Just make it much easier for the user to use this API notebooks.
Yep.
Yeah. Then there is the Git integration that I haven't shown yet. So for every workspace that you have, you can right-click the workspace and say manage source control. And then what it's doing, it's basically adding the source control of that workspace to the source control of Visual Studio. Okay, so if you would open that workspace in the browser, it would give you this information that there have been some changes to the workspace. And then you can like select them and say like stage changes, similar as if you would work with Git. And then you could say, I don't know, code, and then commit them. And then you're basically like committing those changes to the Git repository that's behind the workspace. So you basically can do changes using like this edit definition stuff that I've shown before. And then directly commit the changes from VSCode. You don't have to go to the workspace anymore to get your changes into the Git repository. So that's also pretty cool, actually.
Well, that's a time saver for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the last feature now. You can also do an update from the repository if there were any changes. It will also be shown here, like changes coming from Git to the workspace. It will also be shown here. Yeah.
It still just amazes me that we've come so far with like a Visual Studio product that is so universally applicable to everything, from such a bad taste in people's mouths with the like older Visual Studio. Not this product, but the original Visual Studio. Like the joke would be like, oh yeah, you'd start Visual Studio, go out, run some errands, and in like 30 minutes you could come back and it'll be open.
Yeah. No, so VSCode is like super lightweight and
that's great.
It's super extensible as you've seen with those extensions. And the interaction of those extensions, it's also super amazing. And it just makes a lot of sense to build stuff in here, right? And things I haven't shown yet. You can go to vscode.dev. That's the web experience. Also, if you like go to any Git repository, and you would press, we have some here. That's GitHub Workspaces. If you open like any, that's a cool feature that not many people know. If you're on the Git repository, then you're in the browser. You press the dot key, and what it's doing is basically like going to GitHub Workspaces and opening like your repository in like also VSCode web basically, and then you can like browse the repository. And also here you could like install the extensions, right? But jumping back to the VSCode dev, you can also have like the Fabric Studio here. You can log in, and you have like a very same capabilities that you've just seen in the in the desktop. You have it in the browser. Works the very same way. You can like define a filter.
And I think for people that have any amount of like IT lock or other stuff, I think this
exactly
this is very useful.
For this, it's just pretty cool, right? So I can also like browse my semantic models from here without having to install anything locally. Well, I mean, it's at some point it's still installed locally, but it's not like an installation, like not an executable.
I feel like there's probably a few, like hopefully some people watching this either now or later on, like you did or didn't even know that VS Code was available in browser rather than actually in a just as a desktop app, which I think is a nice and not completely aware feature for some individuals.
Yeah. Also, what you see here, like I mean, that's in the web now. I don't have like the Timdle extension installed here. Could probably just go here and say Timdle, then install the Timdle extension. Let's just try this. Oh, that's the right one. Yeah, so that's installed now. Now if we go back and open the Timdle file. Yeah, now you see that's now like picking up the colorization and stuff. And that's like this integration with different extensions. That's just amazing.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's a giant sandbox, right? Like I think I did a video with nobody's spacing on the name, but like last year, I brought somebody on to basically go through like, all right, hey, you're just starting to get started with Visual Studio. What are like 10 useful extensions if you use Microsoft products like Power BI and stuff? Because it can be a little hard to know, like, it's like the app marketplace on a new phone. Like, what should I install that's going to make me productive? Because there's so much in that, and there's some really good ones for like DAX. You have good ones for Power Query, Timdle, modeling. They're basically, if you have a piece of software that deals with code in any capacity, there's probably a plugin for it that's either been made by the company or been made by the community. But thankfully, you have the voting that kind of somewhat helps to find a good one to install and seeing when the last time it was updated.
Yep, definitely. And yeah, I think that's it. That's all I wanted to show.
Flip back over to us here. And if you have any if you have any closing stuff, let me pop back. Here we go.
Yeah, that's here. Yeah, that's what we've seen. That's some the information like the Git repository and all the marketplace stuff. But yeah, you can we'll post it. Guess read, we can post it in the comments afterwards, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, then I'm finally done.
And I'll stop. Question. Then as we're wrapping up, just for the people still on, let us know if you have any other questions. Do remember to drop them into the chat. But I think this is a very useful extension, and I'm curious to know, like, ballpark, how many hours did this take for you to build? Because I'm guessing some of it was lifted from Power BI Studio, at least some underpinnings. But like, how much new time had to be spent to like get it to be extensible for Fabric, if you want to admit it?
I don't know. It's not so bad anymore because like I'm quite experienced by now, and I have like a very generic pattern that allows me to easily add new features. But it's weeks, I guess. Okay. I don't know. I was remember
gonna, good.
I remember that the very first time I was like building an extension, it was like the Databricks extension. It took me like a week to get like a basic API call because I'd never done anything with TypeScript or JavaScript before. And now that I have like some say like templates or some patterns that I can reuse, it's much easier.
That's, I mean, the equivalent that I can Well, for anything, generally, yeah, the first time you do it, it's going to take a long time. It's like the person who spends 20 hours to solve a 5-minute problem,
Yeah,
but you never
exactly.
have to solve that again. But then the second time you do anything similar to that, it's less and less. Like the first time I was doing blogs and videos, like I could spend a day having to like think of the content, write the article, and all that. Now, after 170 recorded videos, I think you're my 150th live stream. Like I have enough of a pattern that I can get an idea, I can make a file off of another file I've already built, like just copy paste, adjust a few things, record the video, publish, and all that, and I could probably do it in about under 2 hours most of the time now,
Yeah.
like end to end and everything. And that used to take me 8 to 10. So it's just the more you do something, the faster you get at it with the skill set. But coming back to just your plugin for this, I think this is a very useful community installation. So I'll definitely add this to my like short list of what do you recommend installing for your like out of the box VS Code extensions.
Yeah.
Get your 2 studios for Power BI and everything else. Community driven and free. And do you have where is the best place for people to suggestions, feedback, bugs, comments, anything like that related to this? What's the best way
Yeah, why
to
definitely like
provide that?
via the Git repository, you can just like open an issue, whether it's like an actual issue or a feature request. Just open an issue in the Git repository. It's also linked in the VS Code marketplace. It should be pretty easy to get there. And then
Okay,
I'll try
perfect.
to respond as soon as possible and give some feedback, whether that makes sense, that's doable at all, or whatever the request is. I don't know.
And we have all those links for the people just down in the comments below in the description below the video. And I have one question here actually that we can use to wrap up then. So I'll say Evereste. Like I'm sure I'm probably butchering the name, but however that's pronounced. What is the main improvement features you would like to see in your extension at the moment? So really good question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see or what I want to have in the future is like this notebook integration, the like the ability to execute code from VS Code against the Fabric cluster. But I'm afraid I have to rely on Microsoft to fix this or implement this. There might be some potential workarounds that I could use, but I'd rather have it probably implemented by Microsoft, I would say. And yeah, I don't really have any impact on that roadmap, I would say. But yeah, I think that's one thing, and maybe like adding the admin APIs. I don't know, that makes sense because it's limited to admins, right? Just a very small set of people, I guess.
It's a good, I think, mix of like practical things that will happen, but then also the wishes, the things that just you can cross your fingers that Microsoft might do something on that. So, good question for that. Thank you. And then otherwise, any final takeaways of like outside of installing it, any resources or anything else you might recommend people to check out if they want to start exploring some of this stuff?
Well, I guess the official REST API documentation. It's also like updated frequently, like every month some new features are being added. And like everything that you can do with the REST APIs are potentially also new features that can be added to Fabric Studio. So if, as I said, like I usually monitor the API changes.
Okay.
But if you find something that would be super helpful or that for you or also for all the other people, and yeah, just ping me and I'll see what I can do.
Excellent. I just dropped the REST API link in there, and you answered a question I was just about to ask. Is like, do you? I'm assuming you have something that tracks changes. So anytime a change occurs in the Microsoft API, I'm guessing you get some kind of notification.
Yeah.
To go check it out and say, oh, I need to go add something to it to pull that in.
Yeah, I get an update.
Excellent.
There. I'm busy. Well, yeah.
Perfect. Well, Gerhard, thank you so much for coming on again for this. With these type of topics, as we've already discussed, I think that it's a perfect opportunity to bring you on in the future as well over onto my second channel at Analytic Endeavors for some of these other enterprise talks. But great information as always, detailed content, and always a pleasure to get you on.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for taking time out of your Friday evening, and otherwise have a great weekend as well.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, cheers. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.